Hello everyone, it's me Bryson P. This is part 3 of how Norway built a UV Utopia while the US is still struggling to go electric. If you hadn't seen part 1 or part 2, those are right above. You can check those out before you continue with this one, or you can continue with this one. So we are at the part of charging anxiety, and we will get started. Here we go. Charging anxiety.
But reliability of chargers has been an issue. Some say there isn't range anxiety in Norway, but instead there's charging anxiety.
What has been the biggest complaint from electric vehicle owners, would you say?
It has been charging queue and chargers not working. Now the market is more mature, so it's less of a problem. Still happens, but not as often. Now it's the payment systems that are like the biggest pain, that you have to download an app or different payment solutions for every company. So it can be a bit confusing, especially for new EV owners.
Is there a way to do it without downloading an app?
We experienced charging anxiety the first time we tried charging our rental EV. We first went to a Tesla supercharger station near Oslo's airport. In Norway, Tesla chargers are supposed to work for all EVs, but we tried multiple ports and couldn't get any of them to charge our car.
I just tried 2 different superchargers. These are the brand new V4s, and I couldn't get it to work.
We gave up on the Tesla chargers and went to a nearby recharge station instead. But at first we couldn't get that to work either.
I think I'll probably have to get off the phone to download the app.
Luckily, the customer service agent spoke English and we had to download a new app in order to get the charger to work. The US is making the same mistake with chargers. Each charging company has their own apps, their own payment methods. But it needs to be as easy as pumping gas in order to achieve mass adoption.
Yes.
Norway is working on improving this with
Now that I will completely agree with. In order to have mass integration of all of these electric vehicles, it's got to be close enough to where it's just like having fuel for your vehicles. You know, you can go to any station and put your debit card in or pay at whatever form of payment that you accept at your place, but you can pay for your fuel and then you can pump it and go. But with the electric, yeah, just like they said, you've got to download this app or that app, or you have to go through a few different hoops and hurdles. Then you have to risk the privacy of that app or that company being hacked or your information being sold via a third party. There's a lot of different factors that I think a lot of people are looking at other than just they don't want it.
regulations.
Now the big problem is to get access to charging, because you can't pay with a credit card here. You need to download an app for every company.
And now, finally, we're also starting to install regular card payment terminals, like credit card or payment card terminals. We know a lot of people have been waiting for those. There's regulation both at the EU level, which means that all the countries in the EU need to have card payment terminals on their chargers going forward. And also Norway has put in place its own regulation, which is even stricter when it comes to deadlines for when this needs to happen.
Okay.
Once we
I like
did
that
get
idea.
it to work, I was pleasantly surprised how quickly the DC fast charger filled up the car.
Just finished charging. We charged the car to about 70%. It only took 15 minutes or so. It went really fast. So that was pretty impressive. Once we actually got the charging to work, it worked really well and went really fast.
It's very simple. In Norway, it's so practical. You can charge anywhere. So we have a charger in our house. My husband can charge in his work. I can charge it there too.
Tesla launched its new fast V4 superchargers in Norway before the US. We visited one that had just opened.
What do you think of these new V4 chargers?
Yeah, that's amazing. Like that's incredible. It goes so fast. You're staying for 10 minutes, and suddenly you have like the possibility to drive for 2 hours. That's phenomenal. It's faster than getting fuel on your car. So I'm really happy with the Tesla.
I save a lot of time using Tesla because before Tesla, the other car I was driving, I used it to charge 3-4 times per day. But now, sometimes I use to charge one time with just 30 minutes of my time. So I save a lot of time with Tesla.
Anything you miss about driving a gas-powered car?
No. You see now nowadays it's very cheap electricity, and it's the network for charging is very good. Often in the summer I go in North Sweden and north of Norway. My family is there, and it's very good.
We spent a week in Norway, and there were a few moments where we felt range anxiety. We drove out to the countryside and didn't spot any chargers along the way.
Hopefully our battery lasts us. Because it feels a little sparse out here.
The other time we felt range anxiety was on the way back to the airport at the end of our trip. Note to rental car companies, it should not be a requirement to return a car fully charged. This is not convenient for travelers that can't charge at home.
Do you ever have range anxiety?
Not anymore. I used to because I was...
So then, hang on now, let's go back up to that comment. So the renters should not be required to return the vehicle with a full battery, but it's been common practice for as long as I've been alive, and I'm sure for way longer than that. You rent a vehicle or you borrow something like that, that's common courtesy to return it with a full tank of gas. And then that becomes common practice where in a business mindset, of course, yeah, you got it with a full tank of gas, you're going to return it with a full tank of gas. Because I'm sure that this is no offense at all to her, but I'm sure she would probably be upset if she went ahead and booked a vehicle to rent, got the vehicle, and only had 50 miles to empty or 60 kilometers to empty, And then so now instead of her being able to get off of her flight, get her vehicle, and go to the hotel, she's got to go and find somewhere to charge or pay Hertz or Sixt or whoever to go and charge it for them, just like you would pay the fee of if you did return it with fuel. They're going to pay for them to go and put fuel in it, so that way the person getting off their flight in order to get a vehicle to do whatever they're doing, they are getting a vehicle that is nice, fresh, clean, ready to go with a full battery or a full tank of gas. So if you're not going to be required to return it with a full tank of gas or a full tank of battery, then you're going to have to pay that premium for them to do it for you, because you can't just drop it off, get it cleaned, and put it back on the line. You now have to go take it to get it charged and everything else, or have or pay for these companies to get chargers put in on their rental car facilities. But you're still paying for that electricity that they are going to have to use to charge that vehicle to put it back on the fleet.
One of the first that bought a Nissan Leaf, the first generation. And I love that car, but of course the range was an issue, especially in the winter time. I used it to the cabin, and one time I had to topple the battery 3 times with fast charging. But today it's really not a problem, so no worries anymore.
A lot of people don't think electric vehicles are very great in the winter. What do you have to say about that?
Well, they are better because you can preheat them, so you can come to a warm car, cozy car. Of course, the battery is, when it's cold, it's not as efficient, but with bigger batteries now, preheated batteries, better charging infrastructure, it's not a problem.
I've heard the battery drains faster in the cold.
That's true. Of course, you cannot drive the same amount of stretches. I would say that if your car handles like 400 kilometers in the summer, it's probably not more than 320 in the winter. That's the way it is. But you have to plan a little bit more, but it's really not a problem.
How is it in the winter?
No, really good, because it's so heavy. So you're able to get to your cabin either way. Because that was something, because my parents has a cabin. That was one of my main worries we had before driving Tesla. But since it's so heavy, it goes so well.
Now that it's close to its 100% adoption goal,
Absolutely.
Norway is considered.
You take a Tesla with all of its independent motors, the 4-wheel drive, and then all of its sensors and everything else that it has technology-wise. Then you add in a good set of, like Continental DSWs or whatever. Like we have Blizzaks are a really good tire for winter, but I don't know what is a major tire that's popular there for you in Norway or in these countries where it's a lot more snowier and you have a lot better winters. But yeah, you take a vehicle that's a whole lot heavier, that has such a low center of gravity because of the weight of the batteries on the bottom. It's going to perform a lot better than, you know, a light SUV or something that's a two-wheel drive or anything like that. Of course.
Considering making some changes to the incentives. EV drivers used to get access to the bus lanes, but the bus lanes became so crowded with EVs that they changed it to EV carpools only now.
There are some rolling back on the subsidies that are in place for the use of EVs, especially when it comes to the use of the public lanes, the discount for parking, discount for use of ferries, and discount on road tolls.
So that answers some questions that I had earlier, because if you remember in some of my other, well, in previous videos to this and previous ones, I asked pretty much that question as far as at what point does the roadways become so filled with electronic vehicles that these types of little benefits no longer actually equate to benefits, and now you have to make changes. As I just said, they've changed it from being able to drive on the bus lanes to now they're just electric lanes, pretty much. Electric carpool lanes. But, I mean, at that point, what? 10 years from now, they're all going to be electric carpool lanes, and then you're still going to be back to a bus lane. I mean, realistically, I mean, I'm not, again, like I've said another once, I'm playing devil's advocate here. But if you're making that transition, then at some point, you're going to end up with just regular lanes and then putting back to a bus lane. Because that's the way that it was to begin with. You had petrol vehicles, carpool, bus. Well, now you're just going to have electric vehicles, carpool, bus.
These have gradually been phased down, and eventually they will be probably phased out, because the electric vehicle car is the new normal.
We have this CO2 tax, but of course when you get to 80% market share, then you don't sell a lot of polluting cars and you don't get a lot of CO2 tax. So then you have to lower the incentives for EVs as well. But of course the technology getting better, the production price is going down. So again, today you don't need as high incentives as we did 10 years ago.
Has there been an issue with more wear and tear on the roads since the cars are heavier?
That is more a question when it comes to exceptions from taxes and so on, because more and more people are arguing that also the electrical vehicles have to pay their fair share of that. When we are fully electrical, of course, electrical vehicles have to pay their fair share amount of using the roads.
Has there been an issue with batteries degrading over time? And I am curious if there's a plan in place when an electric vehicle reaches its end of life. Is there battery recycling that happens here in Norway?
There is a European plan for recycling batteries, and some projects also in Norway where you can hand in the batteries. There are common EU regulation for recycling of batteries, and this is an important aspect for the way ahead, because we want EV vehicles to have a long lifespan in Norway.
So maybe I can answer that question a little bit better. Not particular for Norway and the recycling capabilities that they have when it comes to these lithium-ion batteries, but I mentioned in a previous episode to this that I'm a big proponent to the recycling of these lithium-ion batteries, and as lithium-ion technology continues to advance, you know, these batteries do degrade over time. They give out. You're going to have shorts. You're going to have failures. You're going to have different wrecks and different things that cause these batteries to not be usable. So the best thing to do is not to get rid of them or destroy them, throw them away. The best thing to do is to recycle them. Now, there is a company, it's called Licycle, Licycle, and they have only been around, I think, a handful of years, really. Maybe 2016, I think, is when they actually began. But they've got a couple hubs in, I think, Canada, a few here in the United States that they're working on, and I believe one or two maybe in Europe. But the whole purpose to them is they are a full production facility where they're able to intake these recyclable lithium-ion batteries and then take them down to their individual parts, pieces, their individual metals and their precious materials and then recycle them and produce them back out to where they can be reused and rebuilt into new technology. So it is something that is done and it's something that's being done. I don't know exactly, again, what Norway has particular, but this is something that is in the works, and I can see continuing to grow over the course of this whole entire growth itself. You know, as this grows, that's going to grow. And as that grows, it's only going to continue to get better and more refined, just like as electric vehicles have grown, they've continued to get more refined.
Norway has a robust used EV market as well. And everyone we spoke to said the batteries hold up well over time. This is a used Tesla.
Yes, this is from 2014.
Is there a big used EV market here in Norway?
Yes, it's very many electric cars.
You bought this in 2017?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's a long
I have drove 200,000 kilometers, and the battery is. I checked it was just 3.5% missing kilometers.
Not bad.
Nah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
But you have to take care of that. Don't charge too much. I never charge more than 80%.
What would you say to someone who says that electric cars are just as bad for the environment as gas-powered cars?
This argument is the reason we don't want to rush the transition more than necessary. So that's why we are concerned about the high volume of sales, that we've been pushing cars maybe too much, and the number of cars increasing. And we want people to use the old car its entire lifespan. We definitely can see the different environmental aspects of producing cars itself. It's a consumption that has its negative aspects on environment we need to take into account when changing the policies going ahead.
And like the US, Norway has its share of EV skeptics as well.
We still have a lot of skeptics for EVs, both internationally and in Norway as well. They are climate skeptics, they are EV skeptics, and they have a lot of myths about EVs, the fire hazard, where the energy comes from, the production emissions, and so on. So we still have those discussions all the time, even in Norway.
With all these electric vehicles, have fires been a problem?
No. We had a big car fire parking garage a few years ago, and there was some rumors that it was an electric car that started the fire, and then the whole media went amok. But eventually it was not the EV that started the fire, it was an old petrol car. But of course a lot of EVs were parked there, but the fire didn't spread to the batteries.
Has there been any issues with fires?
Not here, no. None whatsoever. But of course, if an EV burns, it will burn for a long time, but it will not be explosions and stuff like that you have in a gasoline car.
Okay, so what lessons can we have for the US?
Norway is approximately the size of New Mexico in square miles, and with a population of 5.5 million, it has a similar population as South Carolina. So it is hard to compare the United States and Norway, but there are some big takeaways.
Charging today in the US, in Europe, in Norway is still way too difficult for end users. It doesn't always work. It's very often cumbersome. You have to run around with different apps. These are things that, top down in a region, in a country, can be regulated in a way that it's benefiting the consumer without interfering with the free market environment.
Standardization is important for the industry and also for the...
I can tell you that around here, a lot of these cars wouldn't stay plugged in. Like that blue cord that was wrapped up and then coiled around the tree on the hook. There's no way people around here would be walking by, they would see that and unplug it just because they can. And I'm not being facetious, I'm being serious. Just because they can, they would just walk by and unplug it just to give you a hard time whenever you come out to use your vehicle. And it's just, it's an unfortunate reality of the country and the way that my culture is here.
users. For DC charging, for a long time you had the CHAdeMO, the Asian type of DC fast chargers, and you had CCS like the European standard. And Tesla had their own. And now it's more and more merging and more one standard. And I think that's extremely important.
What's the biggest lesson you have for the United States when it comes to electric vehicles?
I say go for it. But you need to have the charging infrastructure so you can actually travel as far as you want, not being afraid of running out of power in the middle of nowhere. So the government should help the infrastructure.
Why so much
charging.
graffiti? I've been noticing this. I didn't see that much graffiti before whenever I was there. It seems like here in the last couple minutes, a lot of these buildings have all this graffiti, like a lot of the chargers have graffiti on them. That's not what I'm accustomed to seeing for y'all, and I don't feel like that's part of the norm. So hopefully if one of you have made it this far in my video, tell me where this is at. I mean, is that still parts of Oslo that are like that have that type of graffiti and have that type of slummy downtown city vibe to it?
To a certain level, and then it will be commercially viable after a while. So do that first nudge, and then everything will start working by itself after a while.
What's something Norway can teach the United States when it comes to EV adoption?
Well, focus on the cars, that to get people to buy the cars, it has to be economic beneficial. And again, we are electrifying ferries, buses, everything in Norway now. The next thing is the big trucks. Still some challenges, but it looks quite promising.
What mistakes have been made over the years? What's some lessons that you've learned?
Well, there has been mistakes. I have to be honest about that. But I think you always have to try, but in small scale. And you have to try different technology. If that is your approach, you are destined to make small mistakes.
It is new technology, it's a new evolving ecosystem, so there are unavoidable lessons learned, right, in that respect. So that's a bit of a forward-leaning statement towards other countries. Make sure that if you want to build a charging station, the construction permit is there on time. If you want to equip that charging station with sufficient power, make sure that there's a process at the DSO level, so the distribution system operator, that can handle such a request very swiftly. And then on the technology side, be aware that if there are different technology providers, not all of that hardware, software, etc. is a plug-and-play state. So they all need to come together to make it work. And that's a learning not only in Norway, but everywhere we build charging infrastructure.
Any misconceptions about electric vehicles you want to clear up?
Well, a lot of people think of electric cars and charging the same way that they think of a gasoline or diesel car and fueling it up, in that you have to come here to our charging station to get energy. But that's really not how it works. About 90% of charging happens at home, so it's not quite the same as having to go to a gas station to fill up your car. You usually have a car that's fully charged in the morning at your house, and then you stop to charge with us when you absolutely have to.
Anything you miss about having a gas-powered car?
No, not really. I've been driving electric for more than 8 years now, and there's no going back.
What kind of car do you drive?
Well, I have two cars, one Kia EV6, Korean one, and I have one Jeep Adventure, which is 100% electric as well.
So you don't have a gas-powered car at all?
Never again. I promise you.
Cool. Okay, so that clears up and finishes our three-part series on how Norway built an EV utopia and why the US is still struggling to go electric. There's a lot we can learn from this, and I believe that, you know, a thing that's really going to make a major impact for us is how we have all the different state laws and all the different things. You know, in order for us to really make it work, we're going to end up having to have some type of federal law that requires all of our superchargers or all of our different ways, you know, to only be whittled down to a certain few. You know, because if you have all these different apps or all these different charging companies or all these different proprietary plugs, it just doesn't ever work because you have too much complicated. It's just too complicated. But whenever you dumb it down and make it to where everybody can use the same type of chargers, everybody can use the same type of software, or like they said, where now they're implementing on all of the new chargers having to have a credit card reader on them. At least in that case, you don't have to have apps. Or if what if you leave your phone for whatever reason? It's possible you could leave your phone at home or your phone is dead, or I don't know. I'm just again making up different scenarios, but you have to be able to have access to it without having just a phone or an app or something like that. So I think that's a big thing that we have to do too. And there's not a whole lot of incentives. Right now the incentive for us to buy an electric car is way less than what it probably is for you. So until it really becomes way more beneficial for us to buy a car than to buy a gas-powered vehicle, we're still going to be stuck in a lot of that same situation as well. So that is all I got. I appreciate y'all for watching. Have a great day, great night. Whatever time it is that you see this, it's me, Bryson P. Goodbye.